understand, what you believe and that you are strong in.
So I think you're bringing up a good point about one of the ways we can control ourselves is by not feeling like we have to keep shifting and changing for different people, but we want our character to be the same throughout. So you shared an area that you have a strength in self-control. What is one area, because we know you're not perfect, surprise, no. What is one area you do struggle with in self-control?
Definitely the biggest area that I struggle in is time management. I'm a lot like Thomas. Spent a lot of time, when I was, not now as much, but I spent a lot of time just playing video games a lot, and it really, it hurt me. It was hurting my grades because, I would definitely be a better student, and I probably would have gone farther. I probably would have gone to a better college, or I would have been able to apply to better colleges if I hadn't slacked off, freshman and sophomore year. And I feel like, even freshman and sophomore year, when people, would say, hey, in the future, you're going to wish you had studied more. I was like, well, whatever. I'm doing good. But, and then that ended up coming and, hurting me later.
So you saw some of the consequences of that. But I know we were talking earlier, and it sounds like you've learned from that, and you're wanting to adjust and make wiser decisions in the future. So we're going to change the conversation a little bit now to money. And a lot of times teenagers, I don't know, Deirdre, do you feel like teenagers struggle with having self-control with money?
Yeah, I think so for sure. This is something that I have been forced to become better at since living on my own. But I feel like a lot of teenagers think it's something that they don't have to worry about right now. But I'm glad that I started when I was in high school. A verse that I like to keep in mind is Hebrews 13:5. It says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. I think the world makes it really, really hard for us to be content with what we have. But I just try to remember that what I have is a gift from God, and I want to use it the way He wants me to.
And Evan, what is one way as a current teenager that you've learned to have self-control with money?
Well, it all depends on your point of view. Because for me, I don't have a job or a source of income other than my parents. So my allowance, I realize, really isn't my own. None of my money, right? Really nothing I own is mine. It's my parents. It's a gift from my parents. So when my parents, for instance, I get $20 a week for lunch and kind of transportation to and from school, I realize that I can't just spend that whenever I want because, one day I spent $20 on my lunch, can I have more money? That wouldn't be respecting my parents' intentions. Because they said, okay, well, this is what you have for the week. You have $20, spend it wisely. So really, if I want to hang out with friends after school, I make sure that I call my parents and I say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be hanging out with friends, I might spend some money, is that all right? Or, I don't say it and call them, I just make sure I don't ask them for more money later because I spent all my money that week.
So you're setting the boundary of controlling your expenditures and knowing ways that you can appropriately spend it. Even now, that's going to develop healthy habits for the future. So there's a lot of things that we could talk about self-control. So we're going to wrap up this conversation. In conclusion, Deirdre, when you think of the boundary of self-control, what is one piece of advice that you would want to leave the group of teenagers here tonight?
I think one thing I would want you guys to know is that we're all human, and we're all going to mess up at some point, so I think it's important that when that happens to just acknowledge it and move forward, because dwelling on it will just make it harder to reset that boundary.
Definitely for me, for lifestyle choices, if you have an addiction to anything, be it drugs on the really serious end, or sweets or caffeine on the maybe not so intense side. It's just, you have to understand that it's on you to change the way that you live or to set boundaries for yourself. Because, unless you try to change the way you live, nobody else is going to be able to help you.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point that if there's areas in our life that we don't have self-control, we really have to have that desire and want to change. I mean, our parents can set boundaries, or the government or law enforcement can set boundaries, but true change is going to happen on a heart level. And some of you may be feeling like, I don't have any desire to have self-control in my life. My encouragement to you, if you feel that way tonight, is to just pray, God, help me to want to have self-control. Because right now, I don't even have the desire. And I think that as you prayed that's a way that God can begin changing your heart. Like we started our evening tonight, self-control is an aspect of making daily choices that are wise. And ultimately, like we said, the Bible says, like a city whose walls are broken down is a man who lacks self-control. We don't want to be vulnerable to attack. Specifically with self-control, it helps us not be attacked by our own selfish desires and things that we are wanting to indulge in. I mean, ultimately, godly boundaries for ourselves is a way of God protecting us. So as we break up into small groups, you're going to talk about this a little bit further. But thank you so much, you guys, for being a part of our panel.